Hey guys, so today's video will be about the Shaman class. So the Shaman is one of the only healers that you can play in Ulala alongside the Druid. And I do think that the theme of the Shaman is really cool. Like they've got music that they play, a drum that he carries around, and like a tambourine that he hits to heal. Um, I'm going to quickly go through the overview of the class, the attributes, the pet skills. I'm going to go through all the skills that the Shaman has and then talk about which ones I use. And then a Clatter Build, of course. So, first thing I want to talk about the Shaman is just an overview of the class. Like why you should play this one over, say, a DPS or a tank class or even the Druid. I think the Shaman is actually very flexible. Sometimes I feel like on the Druid, I get like hung up on I have to use the bird skill. By the way, if you don't transform into the bird, then you should just move on to the Druid guide. But if you don't care about that, because that is actually a big point. I do think the classes are so similar that if you just like the way the bird looks and you like the idea of transforming, then you might as well just play Druid because it's just as good as the Shaman and vice versa. But really, I think the Shaman is super flexible. It can do single target. It can do AoE. There doesn't seem to be like one build that you use all the time. So if you like switching skills around and trying things, then I think the Shaman is a really fun class for that. Unfortunately, I think that the difference between the Druid and the Shaman is so small though that I would never like remake or like start over because I didn't like Druid. Because if you don't like Druid, you're probably not gonna like Shaman. You probably just don't like healers. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about if you already decided you're playing a Shaman, what is it that you need to focus on to get stronger? And let's talk about the attributes. So in the attributes, you have full int, like always, and then tech. So a couple of things I want to talk about for attributes. One, the difference between a healer and a DPS is not that big. They almost want the same stats. So a lot of things you'll see if you've ever played a DPS class that you're going for the same best in slots, basically. The Shaman's talent is Symbiosis and Assist, so it's a 5/5. This is like the difference between the Shaman and like a DPS class, where you'll see DPS will have 10 assists usually. So this is good. It keeps them a little bit tankier and still gives them the attack. Let me explain why I did int and tech though, because I do think there is a case to be made that you could go stamina on a Shaman. I think the reason for this would be most healers tend to be free to play or like this. They don't spend a lot. I'm saying most because I know there's like whale healers for sure. But it tends to be where if you're playing a healer class, you're saying, okay, I'm just going to support and I'm not going to be all flashy. I'm just going to like, rely on my team to carry me. And that's okay because honestly, like if you're a healer, you're carrying your teammates. They cannot survive without you. So it's just this conception that you're like, oh, I have to play a DPS to be strong. But yeah, but you need a healer to stay alive. So trade-off. But you'll notice that because of that, I do see some shamans and druids that die before everyone else. Like they'll be the first ones to die. And if that's the case, if you're a little bit free to play or you're behind your teammates and they're like at a higher stage than you think you should be, then taking some stamina and trading out some tech is fine. Tech is not that great for the healer, although it is the second best. So if you wanted to go like 3-1-1, I would not even complain about that. But for sure, you need to put at least 3 into int every single time. It's super important. And that's because your heals scale off your int or your attack. So that's attributes. I think I talked a little bit longer than I usually do on that. Let me talk real. So the tech, the reason it's your second best is for the crit. Heals can crit, so that's awesome. Let's go ahead and move into the pets. So I'm going to talk about, in my old videos, I kind of made the mistake of only talking about what attributes you want from a pet. I'm actually going to specifically talk about what pets you want. So we'll start with the attribute, and that would be assist. So as the healer, you want this little blue symbol here. These are going to be your best pets because they just help your healers be a little bit stronger. But let's look at what pet exactly you want to be going for. Early on, you have the option of these marmots. Like, this is very early, like the second place, I think. And they're not bad, and there's different versions of them. So you're going to be making a lot of like kebabs, vegetable skewers to get these. But you'll pass that really soon. And if you're past that, there's actually a set right here of marmots that are really good for you. And the great part is they cover so many elements that you can almost, if you get all four of them, you can almost just change them for every battle. Unfortunately, there's not a Fire Frost one, which is really important where I'm at right now. But there's still Fire Lightning, which can be used. So let's review why. The biggest reason is because you get them at Sinbad Rainforest, and that's about where you'll also get your best skills. So Sinbad Rainforest is like a power spike for almost every class. So for the healers, specifically the shamans, you can actually just make mushroom kebabs, and you have a double chance to get one of these, basically. And then you're going to have to, or triple, sorry. So mushroom kebabs, you're going to spam these until you get one. You'll notice that the talent cap is at 25.6. That's a lot higher than the ones before it. Right here. 24. So this is a big jump from the ones before. And then really you don't unlock a better one until like you just don't. Like not for a long time. So these marmots are super helpful. So definitely make a lot of mushroom kebabs. Get these marmots. Now let's talk about pet skills. So the skill you're going to want to level up on your pet is Inspire. It's the same as the DPS one. The reason for this is because it gives you attack. And like I said, you're already running an assist pet, so increases master's attack by 60% of 138 of assists for 6 seconds. So it's scaling off of assists, which you're going to have a lot of because of your pet, right? So let's go into passives, which I'll need to go into pet skills here. I guess if you're not going to run assist, then there are really not that many great options outside of that. I would probably get Healing Mist or Devotion. I mean, if you can get Devotion but you can't get Inspire, that doesn't really... They're both legendaries. I'd probably just wait it out and get Inspire. It's by far best in slot for you. But for passive skills, it's actually... Photosynthesis is going to be the normal one for every class, but other than that, because this one can be difficult to get, the competitive heart is great. Like increasing your assist even more, so it scales with your Inspire. It's going to be really strong. And anything that like increases assist is going to be more important than everything else. All right, so those are pet skills. Now let's move on to the skills, which usually takes the longest, right? So there's kind of two different builds that I've been running, and the first one is going. I'm not going to go through every skill because I do think that some I don't use very often, so I'll go through the build instead, and we'll just talk about the skills in the build. So the first one is this AoE healing build. Like this is if everyone's taking similar damage, I run this one a lot. So it's Ancestral Gift to start, although you could start with Font of Purge, and I'll explain that later. So Ancestral Gift is gives you an ancestral mark. So these marks are like the main source of healing in this build. So it gives everyone a mark, or it gives you a mark, and then you are able to obtain another mark with Blessing of Spirit, and everyone who has a mark currently gets an extra 10% healing. Or sorry. So it increases your healing by 10%, and then Chain Heal is your big heal in this combo. So you release all the Ancestral Marks, which are like you have 2 stacks of them after this. So after you release them, it's increasing healing by 25% for each one. So this can actually increase a lot. I would actually recommend probably putting Font of Purge before it. And the reason for that is Font of Purge is just OP. Like, it's really good. Like, even if you ignore the debuff thing, which it usually works really well, the fact that it heals for 30% is higher already. Like, look at the percentages on these. 21, 22, 26, and this costs 4. Font of Purge is just great value, and if like for any reason that they actually have a debuff on them, it's like increases the healing by another 10% and removes the debuff. Like this is Font of Purge, I think, is if you're going to get one legendary item or skill for the Shaman, I would recommend Font of Purge. And we haven't gotten to the second one yet, but I'll explain it when I get there. So Font of Purge and Chain Heal to follow. This is probably my go-to AoE. Unfortunately, I don't have like high rarity of them, but I still think this is really strong for AoE healing. Let's go ahead and move into my single target. And I do use this one a lot early. My single target looking like... Oops, sorry, wrong totem. Into the combo. Let me put it together first, and I'll explain why. And this one can be switched out, really. But I'll use this one. Okay, so the first one is going to be Life Totem. So Life Totem, I think, is the second skill that I would get Legendary of if I were going to spend. And that would be because it scales with your attack, and the percentage as it goes up is going to last longer. It might take an extra hit for you. So basically, it summons a totem that links to the tank almost always, and transfers 80% of their damage received to the totem. So it just like kills the totem off, basically. But the stronger it is, you're going to get to keep the totem out longer. So I think at Legendary, it's really important. Two things that are really great about this is you don't overheal with it. So basically, like early on, sometimes healers will like take a quick heal, and that's actually not very good because no one's taken that much damage yet. With the Life Totem, it only costs 2. You can put it down, and it just mitigates healing, so you're not like over healing anybody. So I think this is really good skill, and I would try and get a legendary of it if you've already got Font of Purge. Then we have Faith Protection. This is similar to the bird that the druid has, where they transform into the bird and then they like have increased healing for the rest of the fight. Faith Protection is basically that, but it does come with a pretty good heal. So heals the lowest health teammate, so this is good for single target. And oh, sorry, I messed them up. Actually, Ancestral Protection is the one, the bird one. So call for Ancestral to increase healing by 13%. So now you have like a permanent 13% for the rest of the for the rest of the fight, healing increase, and it also does a pretty good heal on the lowest health target, which is, like I said, why we use it for single target. And then right after that, you get a combo with Faith Protection, which you heal the teammate with the lowest HP again, but for a lot more. If in this state, then it provides the target with an extra protection for 10 seconds and heals for another, like after they get hit, it'll heal them again. So I think this combo is really good, and you get it really early on. So if you're like starting new, you won't have Life Totem and Font of Purge, so you need to run Ancestral Protection and Faith Protection. And then last one is interchangeable. I'm using Ancestral Aegis because I have it at Legendary, and it's good for AoE fights. Like, not AoE, sorry, when there's multiple enemies. Like, if you're against the Ankylosaur that has, like, him and then 4 things in the back, this is super strong. It's probably best in slot for fights like that. But against things that are, like, single target, I'd actually recommend the Spring Totem, because it heals for a decent amount, and it does 2 people. So Spring Totem or the one where it scales off the lowest health. Sorry, where is this one? Like the lower health you have, this one here, Jumps of Recovery. Yeah, so a lot of times you'll see your tank is like hovering at this like really low health for, especially gladiators are like this. So I think this goes really well with gladiators, and the scale is really good. I've seen it like when it gets to, it casts at like 1% of the health of the tank, it'll jump up to like 30 or 40% of his total health. So the heal does scale really well with the lower HP of the teammate. So those were the skills that I use. I won't go through all of them because this video would be too long. It already is, but those are the skills that I use. And then lastly, we'll go through Clatter Build. So the Clatter card, early on, I actually recommend, like you'll see a lot of people recommend Solid Bone, which is the best one for the healers. But early on, I think that the, like, you're not going to get the legendary one, which is great, and you're probably not going to get this guy. And I've had trouble finding the Yak King, so I get stuck with these 4. And honestly, they don't bring enough. Like this isn't enough, the volcano, for me to think like it's worth bringing desert and woodland, especially woodland. I don't like. So while you do want to build this for the end game, I think earlier before you get there, there are better builds, and the better build is Sharp Claw. Sharp Claw is really good early in the game. Like all DPS and all healers should be taking Sharp Claw early. The reason it gives HP, which you need for survival, you're not ready to min max early game, and attack, which it's 30%, and it's only 3, so it's really good. Also, if you get this guy here, who's really awesome, he gives you plane. So with plane, that's all you need is one more plane card for another 20% attack. At this point, you're getting 50% bonus attack. So you'll see I'm running plane. I'm running 3 sharp claws. This guy is he's just a plane buffer, but if I were to open up a new slot, I could give Volcano very easily. And I'm using the Snow Mountain, which later on, you'll also want this. So Solid Bone and Snow Mountain is late game. You're going to want both of those. And early on, I was able to get 2 pieces. So this is still good if you can get it. That one I understand is harder, but it's really nice that it pairs up with Sharp Claw early. So healers have some really good options. If for any reason you can't get Sharp Claw, try and get Flying Wings at least. It's definitely not as good, but I can't think of anything else that would be better than Sharp Claw. And let's go back. So that was Clatter card. That's about everything with the Shaman. I will say, I think the Shaman is maybe a little bit easier to play than the Druid as well, so take that into consideration. You only really need Font of Purge and that Totem. Whereas with the Druid, I feel like you need the bird, you need like all 3 abilities that go with the bird, so not as forgiving. So I like the class. I'll keep playing it, and I recommend it to everybody. Let me know how I did on this video. I know it was longer than I wanted it to be, but that's how it ends up being because I get more in depth in the skills than I should. But thanks for watching, guys, and be ready for my Druid build to come out pretty soon. Peace.